which they also cut down significantly, and coincidentally or not, flatteringly, Fox had the right to do it. And not just because cable and broadcast networks have different rules. Now, the 60 Minutes editing case would almost certainly fail spectacularly in court, according to legal experts. But Paramount Global, which owns CBS News, is currently trying to merge with Skydance Media. And in order to do that, Paramount will need the approval of the Trump administration.
One of the scariest elements of this Trump presidency that isn't talked about nearly enough is the way that we've seen the mainstream media react to his threats of lawsuits, deplatforming and stripping them of their licenses. Donald Trump's intimidation has clearly led to more positive coverage than he certainly deserves from the mainstream media, but it's actually starting to backfire because it is so obvious that Donald Trump's attacks on the free press run so contrary to everything MAGA claims to stand for with their espousal of their free speech, fundamental platform, their principles that they want free speech. But of course, that's not the case, and that's being called out all over the place in ways that have really backfired on Donald Trump, especially because we are seeing clips of his old interviews, one specifically that really hurts him, that was cut out. But it's not just that Bernie Sanders is making this an important part of his platform in calling out Donald Trump and calling out the mainstream media. And we are going to get into all of that. But before we do, if I could quickly ask you to leave a like on this video. And if you haven't already and you enjoy our channel, to hit that subscribe button, it goes a long way. And it really does mean a lot to me now, before we get into what Bernie Sanders had to say, calling out the press. At large, Jake Tapper had a lot of interesting thoughts on the way that Donald Trump's assault on the media has played out, and I want to take a look at that right here.
Mr. Trump said, quote, CBS should lose its license, unquote. And then Trump sued under news distortion rules for $10 billion. Now, the suit is widely regarded by legal and First Amendment experts as, well, as one put it, quote, a frivolous and dangerous attempt by a politician to control the news media. Broadcasters have a right to edit interviews. It's editorial judgment. For example, Fox in June 2024 aired this.
Would you declassify the Epstein files?
Yeah, I would.
But that wasn't Trump's actual whole answer. It was a taped interview. And as Semaphore noted at the time, Mr. Trump, in the full, unedited version, sounded a lot less definitive about releasing the Epstein files. Here's the whole answer.
Would you declassify the Epstein files?
Yeah, I would.
All right.
I guess I would. I think that less so because, you don't know it. You don't want to affect people's lives if it's phony stuff in there, because there's a lot of phony stuff with that whole world. But I think I would, or at least
Do you think that would restore trust? Help restore trust?
Yeah, I don't know about Epstein so much as I do the others. Certainly about the way he died. It would be interesting to find out what happened there, because that was a weird situation and the cameras didn't happen to be working, et cetera, et cetera. But yeah, I'd go a long way toward that one.
Quite different, right? Now look, Fox had every right to make that edit. Now, did that edit make Trump look more decisive, less equivocating? Did it make Trump, therefore, look better? Yep. Was that why Fox did it? I have no idea. Maybe they just had some timing issues. Either way, it's Fox's right to do it, just as it was Fox's right to do it when they had Trump's surprise visit to a Bronx barber shop on air, which they also cut down significantly, and coincidentally or not, flatteringly, Fox had the right to do it. And not just because cable and broadcast networks have different rules. Now, the 60 Minutes editing case would almost certainly fail spectacularly in court, according to legal experts. But Paramount Global, which owns CBS News, is currently trying to merge with Skydance Media. And in order to do that, Paramount will need the approval of the Trump administration, specifically the FCC, which, under its new commissioner, Brendan Carr, has suggested that Trump's news distortion complaint will be considered by the FCC before any merger can be approved.
So as I mentioned at the beginning of this video, we see a rehashing of all of the clips that Donald Trump has seen cut out of his interviews, very specifically his mention of Jeffrey Epstein in that Fox interview that became so famous again because he cut it out. But this focus on VP Harris's 60 Minutes interview was just so absurd. And what made it even more absurd is that he was able to win this lawsuit that we have seen so many media outlets cave to Donald Trump out of this fear and intimidation that they're giving him positive coverage or they're not covering his attack on our democracy at all. We have seen a mass exodus of journalists from these sort of mainstream establishments in the Washington Post, the New York Times, of course, CNN, Jim Aosta recently, because of what Donald Trump is doing in intimidating the corporate media, much more concerned about other businesses and investments that they have in these giant conglomerates than actually reporting the truth. And that is what Bernie Sanders was so importantly calling out.
The Des Moines Register, over a poll published in that newspaper just before the election, showing that Kamala Harris was up 4 points.
If the mainstream media continues to bend the knee to Trump, who are we supposed to rely on for the truth? And if Donald Trump cares so much about free speech, why isn't he allowing it to happen? It's why we have seen such a insurgence of shows like this, but independent journalists large. That's why I'm doing this show now, because the mainstream media has largely failed us in its coverage, what it wants to talk about, what it doesn't want to talk about. And it's why it's so important that Democrats and people in these progressive media spaces are investing and building out this infrastructure so we aren't relying on CNN or the Washington Post or the New York Times to tell people what is actually happening in the Trump administration, and so that we can focus on the stories that actually matter. And certainly right now, one of those stories is the failure of the mainstream press. They're not giving nearly the attention to the issues that are most important, that are deserved. How many stories have been run about tariffs since Donald Trump announced his dumb trade war that should have been told, that should have been reported during the campaign? We understood what the effect would be. So did those journalists. But they did. They talk about it. No, it was central to Donald Trump's campaign, but they didn't really seem to care back then. No one seemed to care that Elon Musk, the biggest government contractor in the country, also the biggest political donor, was side by side with Donald Trump. But now the mainstream media does want to give that a little bit more coverage. But of course, what they're more focused on is the relationship, the drama between Trump and Elon, rather than what Elon is doing to assault our government. They're not giving us the actual stories that matter. Because if they do, Trump will come after them. And it seems like that's what they're more worried about. Because Jeff Bezos doesn't care if the Washington Post isn't doing good journalism as long as he still has Trump in his pocket, or vice versa. He's more concerned with his other corporations than he is good coverage of the Trump administration. And speaking of that good coverage, that is certainly necessary. Bernie Sanders was bringing some of that, and two great call-outs to Elon Musk that I want to check out right here.
Let's be clear about what's happening right now in Washington, D.C. Elon Musk is the wealthiest guy in the world. He contributed $270 million to elect Donald Trump as president. Surprise, surprise. He is now having the most important job in the United States government. That's what happens when you make a huge campaign contribution. And by the way, Musk today is $150 billion wealthier than he was before Trump was elected. How's that? Not bad. Now, what Musk is trying to do right now is to destroy USAID, a program which helps hungry and sick children all over the world, the poorest people in the world. That's what the richest guy in the world is doing. Today, he's going after USAID. Trust me, tomorrow he will be going after the programs that impact you and your family. That is Medicaid, that is Medicare, that is community health centers, that is education, that is Pell Grants, that is affordable housing. Together, we are going to stand up and fight back, get organized, and tell Trump that this country is a democracy. The government is supposed to work for all of us, not just the billionaire class. So stand up and fight back. We can do it. We can stop them. Thank you.
This is what we should be focused on all the time and always. This is the important story and will continue to be, unfortunately, for a long time. Even after Trump is gone, I started saying that dark money isn't a part of our politics anymore. Unfortunately, in the Trump era, dark money is our politics. Elon has bought his way into the presidency. Elon has bought his way into the elimination of government entities that oversee his own companies. Elon has bought his way into complete control of the dollars that are sent to his company and the dollars that now won't be sent to his competitors. That's what this is all about. It needs more coverage all the time. And that's why it's so scary to see these failures of the mainstream press. It's why they need to be called out. It's why they need to be kept in check. And it's not even necessarily so they do their jobs. I don't feel like they will. Their bosses do not want them to. But we have to acknowledge there's a reason why things aren't being covered, because it's just as much a part of the story as the corruption itself. And that is what we're going to be talking about. Of course, every single day on this show, I don't have Jeff Bezos giving me instructions on how to cover Donald Trump. I'm going to do it exactly how I'd like all the time. That's a promise. And if you want to support that, as always, you can hit that subscribe button, you can leave a like on this video, and if you stuck around to the end, you can drop a blue heart in the comments. And until next time, I'll see you soon.